Welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to teach you how to make your success simple so that you stop struggling on the way to trying to create the life that you want. Let's dive in. Now that I'm 38 years old, if I were to have 25-year-old Rob in this room, he'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. That guy's full of shit. And I want you to understand, up until about 3 years ago, I actually would have said the exact same thing up until about 3 years ago. Now that I've worked on myself more, I've been working on myself now for 19 years. I've been in self-development. I'm actually starting to understand that the key to life, to be more successful, is to do less. Let's be real. Life is hard. Sometimes it's really amazing. Sometimes it's torture. It's beautiful. It's fun. It sucks. It's a journey. It's all over the place. It's ups and downs and everything. But at some point, everyone who's listening wakes up and realizes that there's more for us. Now, there are some people who are in this world, many people in the world, that don't realize that there's more for them. But at some point, you are listening to this podcast because at some point you woke up and you're like, I want more from my life. I'm going to start working on myself. I'm going to try to become better. I'm going to try to achieve more. I'm going to try to have more success, more happiness, more love, more joy, more money, less stress, less anxiety. And then once we decide that we want more, we start to find out that we need to evolve. We need to become a different person. Like, we can't create a new life if we're going to be the same person. We've got to be different. It's kind of like Einstein said, you can't create a different life with the same consciousness that created the life that you have. And so it's about evolving. It's not about necessarily, like I used to say, become better. Because if you think, okay, I need to become better, well, that automatically implies worse, which means that you are worse right now, which can already make people go into a tailspin and start to get into guilt and shame. But what we need to do is we need to evolve into the next version of ourselves. We need to expand ourselves into a different version of ourselves. We need to just evolve. And same way that, like, a flower before it blooms isn't less than a flower after it blooms. It just blooms and it evolves over time. And we must evolve if we want more joy, if we want more money, if we want more peace, happiness, love. If we just want more out of life, we must evolve. But when you first start on this journey of self-development, it's exciting. I was very excited, and lots of people are very excited. I can't wait to improve myself. I can't wait to evolve, to get more out of life. And then what happens is you realize that in order to evolve, to get more, you start to become very self-aware. And you start to become very self-aware of all of the shit that you need to change, all of the shit that needs to go. And in turn, you're like, oh my God, I gotta get rid of a lot of things. I got a lot of crap that's wrong with me. I got a lot of people in my life that need to change. I've got to redo my entire life. And there's this Buddhist metaphor that says, life is basically like this. You go into an old attic. You go up in the old attic, let's say, grandparents pass away and you're looking through the house and you go up into the attic and you see this really, really old mirror and it's got dust. It's just covered in dust. Like, you could tell it's a mirror, but you can't see yourself. And then you take your hand and you brush it across the mirror so that you can see yourself in the mirror. And all of this dust starts to come up and you start sneezing and coughing and you're inhaling this dust. And basically, that's the idea of self-development, is that you find this mirror, this dirty mirror that is who you've become, and you start to take your hand and you move and all this dust comes in and makes you cough and sneeze and all of this stuff. The dust, all of the things that need to come off that mirror in order to see yourself is not you. You're not the dust. The things that you've now identified as quote unquote bad with you that you need to change, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just in order to become your true self, to see your true self in the mirror, there's a lot of old unconscious programmings, unconscious conditionings that are in the way. And those are the things that we need to start to work through in order to become the best version of ourselves, in order to see ourselves, our truest version of ourselves, come to light. Because in fact, there is nothing wrong with you. That dust is not you. The journey that you are on, the journey that I am on, is perfect. It's perfect for us. Your life, I want you to understand, is a perfectly crafted curriculum for you and what you need to go through to learn on this human 3D planet, this human experience that you're in, that you signed up for. I believe that our soul signed up for the human journey that we're currently on. And so mine signed up to be Rob Dial for some reason. Yours signed up to be you for some reason. And so I believe that everything, because I believe that, and this is just my belief, it doesn't have to be yours, that everything is perfectly designed for me. And your journey designed for you is far more intelligent than we can understand. And so it's about, all right, my life is a perfectly crafted curriculum, which means on, whatever day, August 17th of my 39th year, I woke up and realized I need to change. And it was always supposed to be that way, because naturally we think, oh my gosh, it's been 40 years and I just finally woke up. Well, that's how it was supposed to be. Because then we go, oh, well, I wish I would have learned these things when I was 20. Then I'd have an extra 20 years of myself. Well, it wasn't supposed to be that way. When people always say, like, I'm so far behind. No, there's no way that you could be behind, because you're perfectly in the place that you're supposed to be. So where I see people go wrong and where I went wrong, and I did this for years, I'm talking like, please say 15 years of your life right now, is I looked at all of the things that I wanted to create in my life and what I wanted to be and all this stuff. And what I wanted to do is I started to add things on top of it. And I started to go, okay, well, I need new habits. I need to wake up every single day at 5 a.m. I need to do 53 things in my morning routine checklist. I need to buy every single self-help book I possibly can, read the first 12 pages of it, and then just decide to buy another one because that one wasn't interesting to me. And then I need to do this, I need to do this, and this, and this. And I kept adding and adding and adding. And my life became all of these things that I needed to do. And all of that's great. Waking up early, having a morning routine, reading books, all of those are great. Going to seminars, getting a coach, all of those are great. But I want to tell you something that took me a very, very long time to understand. And I've been harping on this a lot recently, is the secret to self-development that took me over 15 years to realize, is that the secret to self-development is about subtraction, not addition. Hey, real quick, I want to introduce you to something called Mindset Mentor Plus. If you love this podcast, you will absolutely love what I'm about to talk about. I designed Mindset Mentor Plus to help you actively integrate every one of these episodes into your life. And here's how it works. With every episode of this podcast that comes out, Mindset Mentor Plus subscribers get more. You're going to get multiple page, detailed printable worksheets, effectively a mini masterclass that's way more in depth than just this podcast. They also come with journaling questions, challenges, assignments, and so much more, so that you're not just listening to these podcasts passively, but you're actively integrating them into your life. That way you improve much faster. I also do monthly Q&A sessions in there and much, much more. If you want to learn more about it, go to mindsetmentor.com or click the link that's down in the description. So for the first over decade of me being into self-development, I was like, I need to do more, add more, read more, learn more. It's about addition. And then I realized, as I've gotten older, as I've hopefully have gotten wiser, I've read more books, I've gotten into more spiritual learnings and things that I've done. Oh my God, I've been adding a bunch of stuff, but really what I should have been doing all this time is just subtracting things. Self-development is about subtraction. I didn't know this for years. I had way more knowledge from everything I did, but I felt the same. And so what I realized is it's about removing things from our lives, just the same way that you remove the dust from the mirror, not about adding things to our lives. It's about pulling all of the weeds out of our lives. Like when you look at a computer and a computer gets a virus, you don't add a bunch of programs to it to try to help with the virus. What you do is you try to remove the virus. You try to identify the virus, find it, and remove the virus to get it back to normal working order. Well, when we come into this world, we are a perfect being who is just unconsciously programmed. Programmed is a very specific word here. Unconsciously programmed and conditioned. And this is what you're supposed to do. And this is who you're supposed to be. And that's how you're supposed to act. And all of that can be good, but there is some viruses that are kind of installed there. We need to identify the viruses. We need to uninstall the programs that are holding you back. And so I'm going to say something that might be surprising to you, but what I have come to find is that it's very true. Success is not hard. For me, for a very long time, I thought success meant I had to struggle my way to success. And when I say success, I mean whatever it means to you. For some of you guys, it might be like become a millionaire, make money, run a successful business. For some of you, it's have a successful marriage. For some of you, it's be the best parent you could possibly be. Success in all of those things is very natural. It is a natural progression to get better and to get into, I said the word, to evolve, I guess is a better way of saying it, right? To evolve into, go on to the next version of ourselves. Evolving as a human and changing as a human is natural. To be human means to think something and to be able to create it in reality. We are all magicians. That is natural for us. I have an idea. I'm going to bring this into reality. Every single thing that you see in our reality that humans have created once started in the human mind. This microphone that I'm speaking into, this desk that I'm at, this camera that I'm looking at right now, everything was once an idea in a human mind. So it's natural for us to have an idea, for us to bring it to reality and to create. But if we're not creating at the level that we want to be, if we're not creating new things, becoming more evolved, creating that business, having better relationships, having a great marriage, all of that, it's usually because we have too many programs, shitty programs, viruses running. And what we need to do is we need to start identifying those programs and start removing them. Because I want you to understand this. There's something so incredibly powerful inside of you, and you're just keeping it covered up with all of these old programs. There's something incredibly powerful. And I know it doesn't necessarily feel powerful at first, because what ends up coming out is anger or frustration or sadness that you're not further along in life, or anxiety of all of that. When you look at anger and stress and frustration and anxiety, all of those things, those are all the things that are just kind of in the way. Those are things that are blocking you from bringing the incredibly powerful version of you out. Those are the things that we need to start working on. Those are the things that we need to start removing. So your power is covered up with all of the programmings, all of the conditionings that you've been taught over your entire life, all of the dogmas, all of the beliefs. You come from this family, you're supposed to act this way. You're this religion, you're supposed to act this way. You come from this part of town, you're supposed to act this way. You're part of this country, you're supposed to act this way. These are all these beliefs that are programmed into us. And a lot of times we don't even question our beliefs. We just go off of basic, oh yeah, this is the way it's always been. But if you can understand how powerful you actually are, it would blow your mind. But you have all of these programs running that are in the way. They're blocking you from your potential. So it's the example I've given, I gave a few months ago on the podcast, like the river, right? I've always given this example of like this visual I have in my head is that we all have our own unique life path that we're supposed to be on. And it's like a river. And so most people are just kind of going through the forest and trying to find their life path. Some people eventually get to the point where they find this river, and it's this nice, beautiful, flowing river, and it's just calmly going by. That is your river. No one else can get in that river. And if you just jump in the river that's yours, you'll just go on your life path, and you'll be able to just pick things up along the way because it is where you're supposed to be. But when we have these beliefs and we have these programmings, and I'm supposed to do this and I need to do more, and stress and anxiety, each one of those is like taking a boulder and throwing that boulder inside of the river. If there's enough boulders inside of the river, what happens? It becomes very turbulent. It becomes white water. It becomes stressful. The river that was once calm turns into whitewater rapids. And so what our job is to do is to start removing the boulders, to identify the things that are in our way, the people, the places, the things, the thought patterns, the beliefs that are in the way of us ultimately creating the life that we want. And instead of adding more things, it's about removing those things. So instead of going, I need to learn more, maybe it's like, maybe I start questioning why I have so much anxiety around building this business that I want. What's around this? And start pulling out these boulders that are in the way of you creating the life that you want. It's not about you doing more. It's about you doing less, way less than you've been doing, but doing what you actually want to do. And it should be, success can be effortless if you can find your river, if you can find your passion, find your purpose, and follow this thing and get everything out of the way. It is possible to do less and get more. It doesn't seem to make sense. I get it. If I would have said this to myself 10 years ago, I'd be like, this doesn't make any sense, dude. It is possible to do less but get more because you're doing the things that actually truly matter, not the things that are in the way and things that are stressing you out. And so what you really need to do, and what we all need to do, is just kind of self-analyze And I'm going to go through some things, and I really want you to start to think about this, right? I want you to think about, is this helping me grow into who I want to be, or do I need to remove it? And so I want you to think about the thoughts that go on in your head and start to ask yourself, this thought, this belief about myself, is this helping me get to where I want to go, or is this in my way? The people that I surround myself with, go through each and every person. Are they helping me get to create the life that I want, or are they getting in the way and holding me back? Hell, the people that you follow on social media, are they helping you create the life that you want, or are they holding you back from getting in the life that you want? Every single person, don't think that you could just follow someone on social media. Don't think you could just watch something on TV and it doesn't influence you in some sort of way. All of those things influence you subconsciously in some sort of way. Think about the job that you work. Is it helping you get to where you want to go in life, or is it holding you back? Think about where you live. Is it helping you in the way that you feel, in the way that you want to feel and where you want to go in life, or is it holding you back? Think about what you do to fill your downtime. Is it helping you get to where you want to go? Is it holding you back? Think about what you consume, the information that you consume, the TV that you watch, the Instagram, but also think about the foods that you consume. If you consume alcohol, if you consume drugs, think about everything that you consume. Is it helping you get to where you want to go, or are there things that I need to remove? Think about the video games that you play. Think about the Netflix. Think about all of these things that are part of your life and just ask yourself, is this helping me get to where I want to go in life, or is it holding me back? And I want you to understand, before a massive breakthrough in life, there's almost always a breakdown. And sometimes a lot of pieces of your life need to break down for you to clear out and start to actually create the life that you want. There's a lot of things that it's kind of like if you've ever moved before, like we just moved not long ago. You move and you're like, we got so much shit everywhere. There's so many things. Why do I have so much things? And then we just donate a whole bunch. We've been donating things like crazy. I don't need all of this stuff. It's kind of how it is for us as well, where it's like when you wake up at some point in time, you're like, oh my God, I've got so many things in my life, so many beliefs, so many thought patterns, so many actions and habits that I do. Are these serving me, or are they not serving me? And I want to leave you with a question and a thought. And I want you to journal through it. I want you to meditate on it. I want you to, if you're driving your car, think about it, turn the radio off after this and just think about it. What if success was effortless? Whatever success means to you. What if it was effortless? What if it was the most natural thing that you could do? What would that look like if it was just effortless? What if you're the one that's getting in the way of it? What if this life doesn't have to be a struggle? And so what I want you to start thinking about is if my life to success, love, happiness, everything that I want that shows me success was effortless, if it was easier, what would it look like? And then what do I currently have in my life that I need to remove in order to get that life that I have, or that life that I have in the future? And so I want you to think about that. Remove those boulders so that you can start to create the life that you want. What do you need to do to be more in the flow of your life, to have less struggle and more success and more love and more happiness? Start figuring out what you need to remove, because your life isn't about adding more things. It's about subtracting a lot of things that are just been in the way for a long time. So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If you love this episode, please share it on Instagram stories. Tag me at Rob Dial Jr., ROBDIALJR. Reason why is because the more that you guys share it, the more that we can impact more people's lives. This podcast only grows from you guys sharing it. So if you want to do a huge, huge favor for me, for the podcast, hopefully for the world, share this in some sort of way. I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to leave you the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission, make somebody else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day. Welcome to today's video. Today we're going to dive into the science of motivation, how it works outside of your body, how it works inside of your body, how it works neurologically inside of your brain, so that you can understand what it is you're trying to create, so that you can stay driven and create the life that you want. Let's dive in. When you think about motivation, motivation is a really interesting thing. I get messages all the time from people all day on Instagram that say hey, I want to do this thing, but I'm not doing it. How do I get motivated? How do I stay motivated? Why do I always start towards something and then give up? And so motivation is an interesting thing, because basically what people are saying is, I want something, I want to do something, but I'm not doing it. Can you help me get myself to do it? And so I've done a ton of research for today to help you understand motivation, what it is, and actually the science behind it. And so when you look at motivation, motivation is basically this. The best definition that I came up with, it is the internal and external forces that initiate, guide, and sustain goal-oriented behavior. And basically, it encompasses the desires and the reasons behind actions, driving individuals to pursue their goals and fulfill their needs. And it includes intrinsic motivation, which we'll talk about today. And intrinsic motivation arises from personal satisfaction and internal rewards, while extrinsic motivation is driven by external rewards and recognition. And so when you look at it, motivation is basically somebody saying, I need to do something. I want to do something. I'm not doing it. How do I get myself to do it? And I always say that if you're sitting around like hoping that motivation is going to come in, you're done. You can't just sit around and wait for motivation. You've got to go out and actually create motivation. You've got to understand how to get yourself moving. And so motivation can be categorized, as I mentioned, into two different types of motivation. It's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is inside of you. So it is driven by internal rewards and personal satisfaction and enjoying something and fun or what it's going to make you feel. And so like imagine a painter who just is in love with their art. And they don't do it for money. They don't do it for fame. They do it just for the sheer joy of creating. That would be an example of intrinsic motivation. It's the kind of motivation that is self-sustaining, and it's really just deeply fulfilling to you. If you are motivated to do something for no other reason than for yourself and how it makes you feel, that is one of the strongest forms of motivation, if not the strongest motivation, is doing it for yourself and what it makes you feel. So intrinsic is extremely important. Now, there's also extrinsic motivation, and that's really fueled by all of the external factors. That could be rewards, that can be achievement, that can be recognition, that could be money, it could be fame, it could be being able to buy stuff. And it's really important to understand the real way that an extrinsic motivation works. So like, for instance, like an employee who works overtime to secure a bonus, that would be an example of extrinsic motivation. Or a student who studies really hard to avoid failing an exam. And so while extrinsic motivation can be really powerful, especially for tasks and all of that stuff, sometimes it's not really enjoyable, which as I go through today, you're going to realize the enjoying of something is actually one of the most important parts. And so, if we're always searching for external motivation and extrinsic motivation, it could really lead to like a reliance on always searching for that thing. And another thing that's important is with internal and external motivation is the avoidance of negative consequences. So there's like, yeah, I want to make myself feel good. Yeah, I want to go after this prize. Yeah, I want to go after money. Those are all kind of feel good things. There's also negative consequences, and to avoid the negative consequences. So a few weeks ago, I gave an example of one of the employees that we have here. His friend, or not as really his friend, but someone that he knew when he was in college, he ended up hearing this story about him where he had a gambling problem and he was $40,000 in debt to a bookie. And this isn't like the type of person that's like, hey, you owe me money. Can you please give me my money? It was to the point where they were like, hey, you've got to the end of this month, and if you don't pay us, we're going to end it. Like you're no longer going to exist anymore. So he knew if he didn't pay these people back, there's a good chance that he would be killed. And so he went from being a lazy guy to doing every single thing that he could to get that $40,000. He would go to junkyards and he would pull pieces of cars off and he would sell them on eBay and he would fix cars, and he did everything he could and just worked his ass off for 30 days, and he was able to make that $40,000. And this guy only makes like $50,000 a year, and he made $40,000 in a month. He was motivated not by, oh, this is going to make me feel good, or, oh, I'm going to get a prize. It was negative consequences as well. So there's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, but there's also positive and negative consequences that can motivate us when we look at this as well. And so all of these are very important to start to think about. How can I build up my motivation when we look at it? And so when you look at it, it's what you want to do is you want to find your internal and external motivators for the goal that you're working towards. And the most important one, I'm going to tell you this, is the internal, the intrinsic motivation. You've probably heard people say it before, but you have to have a why. My very first coach used to always say, if your why is strong enough, your how will reveal itself. If you know why you're going for something, you'll figure out how. And most people ask me why they start something and they don't follow through. Like, oh, I start this goal, I start this New Year's resolution, and I don't follow through. Why don't I follow through? And most of the time, the thing that's really the truth is you just don't care enough. And it doesn't mean that you can't get yourself to care enough. It doesn't mean that the reasons to care are not there. It's just that you're not concentrating. It's that it's not that they're not there. It's that you haven't identified that motivation, the thing that you want out of it, the why you're working towards that thing. And it's the reason why people who work out, like if you look at it, people who work out and they're going towards, I'm going to try to lose weight over the next year for my New Year's resolution. 45% of people give up within the first month, not because it doesn't mean something to them, probably because they haven't identified the reason why, the why behind all of it. And so what it's about is to find the internal and the external motivations that you're really working towards. It's interesting because if you look at it, they're both important, but the most important one, like I said, is the intrinsic motivation. There was a study that was done that found that people who work out just for weight loss work out 32% less than people who say that they work out to feel good and for themselves. So weight loss can be important. That is an extrinsic thing. That's something outside of you and actually on your physical body. But people who say they work out for intrinsic, which is to feel good and to feel good about themselves and doing it for themselves, work out 32% longer than people who work out just for weight loss. And so it's important to have the internal and the external. So whenever you're looking at your goal, ask yourself, what is my intrinsic motivators for this? What's my why? Why do I want to do this? Why is this important to me? And then also your external. What am I going to achieve by it? Am I going to get money from this? Am I going to get fame from this? Am I going to look really good in a bikini? And that's the reason why I'm going for it. So you have to really figure that out for yourself. Now, the interesting thing about motivation is it is a psychological construct, but it's not just a psychological construct. It is also a whole lot of neurological processes that are involved in getting yourself to do something. And if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, I've spoken about this. I wrote an entire chapter in my book. The book's called Level Up, if you want to get it. But there's an entire chapter, it's chapter 12, on the dopamine reward system. The most important molecule in your brain for motivation is something called dopamine. It's often referred to as the motivation molecule. And so it plays a really critical role in our brain's reward system, which either reinforces behaviors to continue to keep doing something or it doesn't. And so, I've done episodes in the past in it. I've done, it's an entire chapter in my book, but really what it comes down to is we're all addicted to dopamine. And when you look at it, what is dopamine? Most people think when they think of dopamine, they think it's like a feel-good chemical in your brain. But dopamine, they usually put like dopamine and serotonin together in the same sentence. Serotonin is really a chemical of here and now, of gratitude, of grateful for what you have. But dopamine is the chemical of motivation, is the chemical of more. Dopamine is a very external chemical. And so when you look at the most addictive drugs in the world, there are very high dopamine drugs. Cocaine, very high dopamine drugs. And so dopamine is the chemical of more. And you can't get your brain to stop releasing it. It's always being released at different times depending on what it is that you enjoy. But it's the chemical that's released when you get excited about something, or if you're celebrating it, or if you're enjoying something. And so when you look at that, people who are like the highest achievers in the world, if you look at like the greatest CEOs that have existed, one of the reasons why they're so successful is I'm sure they're smart people and they're analytical, but a lot of times they just enjoy doing what they do. And because they enjoy it so much, they work way more than the average person. And so one of the secrets that I've always heard is to find something that looks like work to everybody else, but feels like play to you. And so if you're trying to find something that you can do, some new passion, something that you can work towards, find something that looks like work to other people, but feels like play to you. So some of the greatest CEOs will work their asses off just simply because they love it. When you look at like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, they were addicted to the process of becoming better. And they were both known as like, hard work, dedication, and just obsession. And what it came down to is that obsession, I would venture to say, came from the fact that they fell in love with the process of getting better. They fell in love with the fact that they were working out in the gym at 4:00 in the morning when they knew their competition was not. And so it was that internal dopamine of like, I'm working out when nobody else is, and this is going to make me better. That thought alone makes it more of a dopamine reward system, which is dopamine is getting released to this reward system, which means I'm going to keep going and doing this thing, versus instead of me getting dopamine from, man, I haven't looked at Instagram today, I haven't looked at Twitter today, I'm going to pull up my phone and I'm going to look at all of these things, and we get dopamine from looking at that. Instead of attaching our dopamine to something that we don't want, why don't we attach to something that we do want, which is the process, which is the action that needs to be taken in order to do what we need to do. And so, I'm sure like Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, some of the greatest CEOs, didn't know that they were creating a dopamine reward system, but they were, and they have attached dopamine and falling in love with the process. And when you fall in love with the process, the end result automatically comes, which is it wasn't that they were working towards a championship. It was that they were working towards being the best that they could be. And when they showed up every single morning, it was just another step towards being the best that they could be. And, most people give up on goals not because they don't want to hit the goals, but simply because they're just not enjoying the journey of hitting the goals. There's been studies on this that find out that people want to hit a goal, but they still give up on it. And it's not because they don't want to, it's not because they don't want to lose the weight. It's not because they don't want to make the money. It's not because they don't want to look better. It's not because they don't want to be successful. It's because they're actually not enjoying the journey. And so then we go, how do I make myself enjoy the journey? A dopamine reward system. And so it's a way to get your brain to release some dopamine after you accomplish a task that is a part of your process. So in the context of like a dopamine reward system, dopamine is released in response to a rewarding or pleasurable stimuli. It is completely subjective, which means that if you wanted to right now, you could put on your favorite song, you could blast it, you could dance, you could make yourself smile and laugh, and you could make yourself feel good in this moment, and your brain would release dopamine, which means it is subjective. I can get myself to release it whenever I want to. And so what happens with the dopamine reward system is the release of dopamine in your brain signals to your brain that the behavior that led to that reward of dopamine being released should be repeated in the future. I'm going to say it again. So this is a very important part. This is actually from one of the psychological studies I found. The release of dopamine signals to the brain that the behavior that led to the reward should be repeated in the future. The behavior should be repeated in the future. Most people go to the gym, and instead of celebrating themselves for going to the gym and being like, man, I'm so proud of you, great job, you're doing good, you're showing up for yourself, they beat themselves up instead. Oh, you should have gone longer. You were only there for 45 minutes. You said you were going to go for an hour. Or they look at themselves in the mirror and they're like, you're still fat. You still don't look as good as everybody else did. And so instead of your brain saying, hey, this is a positive thing to go to the gym, your brain is subconsciously saying, I'm going to beat myself up every time I go to the gym, because then I start to shame myself and I start to guilt myself. And so I don't want to go back to the gym. And so we're actually unconsciously programming ourselves to not want to go do that thing again, because we beat ourselves up and we shame ourselves and we guilt ourselves, and I should have gone longer and I'm still fat, don't have the muscle that I want to, versus saying, hey, I'm proud of you. You're doing a great job. I'm been putting on your favorite song and making yourself release the dopamine. And this is because the dopamine reinforces the neural connections that were involved in the behavior, making it more likely that the behavior will be repeated in the future. So we got to remember to fall in love with the process, and to not base all of our actions based off of the way I look right now, where I am right now, but more of the I'm on the journey to becoming better. So another thing I write about inside of my book is the problem with most of our goals is most of our goals are results-based goals, which is fine. We'll have results-based goals. But, if I say my result that I'm looking for and the goal I'm trying to shoot for is to lose 50 pounds, well, that means I won't. If that's the only time I hit the goal, I might not hit the goal for a year, 2 years from now. And so that's not going to get me addicted to the process, to enjoy the process. I don't release dopamine until I achieve the goal. That could be years down the road. So that's not motivating you when you're just only happy when you get there. And so it's with dopamine being the chemical of wanting more, what I need to do is I need to figure out what results I do want to get to, but then what are the daily actions that I need to take every single day that are a part of the process, and I can celebrate myself in the process. And this is why daily action-based goals, so there's results-based goals, which are important. Where do you want to be in the future? But there's action-based goals. What are the actions that I need to take in order to get to that result? And then what I do is when I take that action, whatever that action is, it could be reading, it could be working out, it could be going for a run, it could be preparing for an exam. You celebrate yourself immediately while doing the behavior that you need to be doing, the action that you need to be doing in order to get the result later on down the road. And if you celebrate yourself immediately, your brain's going to release dopamine. It's going to reinforce to your brain that behavior is positive and you need to do it again, which makes you more likely to do it again. It's not about the achievement of the goals. It's about falling in love with the journey, enjoying the journey, finding a way for you to enjoy the journey. And to make sure that the results-based goals are great. You definitely want to hit the result, but you can forget about the result once you figure out the actions that you need to take and then how you're going to celebrate yourself and how you're going to keep working towards that thing. Because ultimately, this is what it comes down to is how do I stay motivated? Well, I've got to fall in love with the journey. I've got to get my brain in a way, there's not really a better way of saying this. I got to kind of get my brain addicted to the process, the actions that I need to take in order to end up at the result. And so really what it comes down to is how can I get myself there? How can I find my why that is so strong for me? How can I find my intrinsic motivation? How can I find my extrinsic motivation? And how can I use the dopamine reward system to take the actions that I need to take every single day to fall in love with the process so that eventually as time passes, I will get myself to that result that I'm searching for. So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If you love this episode, please share it on Instagram stories. Tag me at Rob Dial Jr., ROBDIALJR. And also, if you love this podcast, you probably are going to love something that I have coming out called Mindset Mentor Plus. Basically, what it's going to be is it is a way to take all of these podcast episodes, each episode that comes out, and integrate them into your life. Every single podcast that comes out, it's going to have a worksheet, detailed worksheet, so you can sit there with your morning coffee, you can listen to the podcast, then you can go through the worksheet, you can underline, you can highlight, you can make notes. There's going to be journal prompts, so you can journal through and figure out how this works in your life, and there's going to be action-based steps that you need to take and assignments in order to use it in your life as well. There's going to be Q&A sessions with me. There's going to be an entire community of people you can connect with. There's going to be a ton of other bonuses. And it's a lot less than some of you guys are spending on coffee every single month. If you're interested in learning more about it, you can go to mindsetwaitlist.com. The first people who join are going to get a discount. So people who are on the wait list, we're going to send an email out to you first before we announce it on social media or this podcast. So if you want to learn more, once again, just go to mindsetwaitlist.com and I'll be announcing it soon. And with that, I'm going to leave you the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission to make somebody else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day. Welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about how doing one thing that is so far out of your comfort zone can completely change you as a person. Let's dive in. Today we're going to be talking about a Japanese technique to help you completely change who you are and the foundation of who you are as a person and shake up all of the BS that you have accumulated over the years that are not actually you. We're going to talk about how to grow yourself with this ancient Japanese technique. And we're going to talk about how if you just do this practice, whether it's once a month, once a week, once a day, whatever it might be. But if you just develop a cadence of using this Japanese technique, it will absolutely change your life in many ways. It is called the Misogi Challenge. And Misogi is basically two words put into one. So miso, which is water, and I hope I'm saying these correctly. Hope I'm not saying it incorrectly. So miso is water, and sogi means purification. Now, in the original Misogi Challenge, it's usually a process that involves really, really cold water for purification. But in this episode, we're not just going to be talking about cold water, although Absolutely, 100%. Cold water is one of the best ways to grow yourself, to change yourself, which we'll talk about that, but it's not just that. But really what we're going to talk about is how to grow yourself, how to grow your willpower by doing something that is extremely hard. There is study after study after study that humans are getting more fat, more lazy every single year. And the idea is, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably don't want to be that type of person. But we become so comfortable, so fat and happy that we would rather stay in a comfort zone versus do something that is hard. And the idea behind the Misogi Challenge and why I think it's so important for everyone to know about is to do the things that seem so hard, that are so far out of your comfort zone, and you do something that is just like a complete foundational rock up, that everything that you've been seeing as quote unquote hard for the past week or 2 weeks or 3 months or whatever it is, doesn't seem like such a big deal. Like to do something that is so ridiculously hard that it's just like, if I did that thing, I can definitely do this. And to basically expand who you are, to expand your mindset. And it's like working out, like it's you can go into a gym for the first time ever and you're weak and you're not able to lift as much. But when you constantly keep and have a cadence of continuing to keep putting pressure on those muscles, you keep growing, keep breaking them down and allowing them to go, and breaking them down and allowing them to grow, your muscles will naturally grow. And that's exactly what we want to do with this as well, is to go so far out of your comfort zone, not a little bit out of your comfort zone, but so far out of your comfort zone that it actually expands and grows who you are to your core. And so when you start to look at it, it's like to do something so hard. Like there's so many women that are listening that have given birth, and they don't think, well, I gave birth, I could do anything, right? Like if you've given birth before, you should have full permission to be like, I can do whatever the fuck I want because I was able to give birth, right? Like that's something that's so hard. It's so out of your comfort zone. You need to remind yourself of how badass you are, of how you were able to do that thing that was so hard. Anytime you look at things like, oh, well, I need to grow my business. I should be able to grow my business. I freaking gave birth to children. Growing my business is easy. Some of you guys have been through some terrible traumas in your life. Oh, I went through this terrible trauma. Growing a business? Oh, that's so easy. Like there's so many things where if we could just relate back and remind ourselves of some of the biggest things that we've gone through, and then we relate it to what we're struggling with right now, it's like, yeah, why wouldn't I be able to do this thing? It's so much easier. Like when I first started dating my wife, I remember she was like, nothing offends you. Why don't you ever get pissed off and nothing offends you? I was like, because if you look at the things that I went through as a child, like the shit that's coming up right now is nothing compared to it. It's not really a big deal. And so really it's more of like, sometimes the universe will place things in front of you and say, it is absolutely something that you need to do. You need to have this terrible thing or this hard thing or this trauma that you need to go through so that you can grow. Sometimes the universe will bring it to us. But in the moments where things are easy, the question becomes, how do we bring it to ourselves? How do we push ourselves so far out of our comfort zone that we can grow our willpower, and the less that we care and the less that we focus on the little shit? The people who I think complain the most, what I've found with coaching people for years and years, the people who complain the most, and obviously it's a very general statement, so take it for what it's worth, are people who are not wanting to do things. When I look out into the world, the people who complain the most are the people who don't want to do things. They just want things done for them. Or the things that, there was a meme that I saw years ago, and it was like a guy that was, as a cartoon, it was a guy that was speaking on stage, and he said, who wants change? And everybody's hand goes up in the crowd. And then the next one, he says, who wants to change? And everybody's hand is down. Everybody wants change, but nobody wants to actually to change themselves. And so if you listen to this podcast, you know that you're the thing that needs to change. And when you look at the toughest people in the world, they're the ones who have been through the most shit, aren't they? When you look at someone, you're like, man, that person is unstoppable. They've usually been through the most shit. Like I was watching a video on, I hope I don't butcher his name, Francis Ngannou, which is the guy who became the heavyweight champion for the UFC, and ended up, going into boxing, and now he's crushing it in boxing and everything. And that's a whole other thing we could talk about on a different one. But he was born in Cameroon and left Cameroon because he wanted a better life and wanted to become a boxer. And then he literally hopped on a boat to try to get to Europe. And 6 times he was arrested from hopping on that boat, trying to get into Europe. They brought him back to Africa and they dropped them off in the middle of the Sahara Desert. And 6 times he walked through the Sahara Desert, got back to the water, and by the 7th time, he finally got into Europe. When he got into Europe, they arrested him. He was arrested for a few months. Then he was able to get into France, and then he was homeless for a while. And he has this like crazy story that should basically be a movie. And then within 4 years or 5 years becomes the heavyweight champion of the UFC. And it's like when you listen to him talk about him becoming a heavyweight champion, it's almost like it's nothing to him because of the fact of all of the stuff that he went through. When he was 10 years old, he was working in shoveling sand inside of sand mines. And it's just like the craziest stuff. And it's like, yeah, that guy is so tough. I feel for anybody who comes up against him. And that's really what it's like. Sure, the universe gave him those tough things to make him tough. But can we look at ourselves and say, you know what? I'm done messing around. I'm done fucking around with all this. I'm going to challenge myself to be better. Because no one's going to do it but me. So with the original Misogi, there's a couple different things. It could be a water purification was one of the things that could be what was an original Misogi. Another original Misogi was fasting for a few days, fasting for 3, 5, or 7 days and having nothing. And sometimes it was just water only, and sometimes it was nothing. For some, it was doing prayer and meditation all day, every day for a week. For some, it was submerging in cold. But really what it comes down to is finding something that is a mental, physical, and spiritual practice, and also at the same time, a purification of there's a conditioned self that we've built up over our years of being alive. And that conditioned self might talk down to you and it might say, you're not good enough. You're not going to be able to go through this thing. And the idea is to find something that's so mentally, physically, and spiritually challenging that basically you have to come up to that conditioned voice that's inside of your head, that little bitch voice that's inside of your head. And you have to either listen to it or you have to say, we no longer have a relationship. I'm going to be the one in charge. And so, when we look at this, how can we take this? How can you take this? And how can you actually start to use it in your life personally? Well, it could be cold water, and I recommend it often. Like I was talking with my head of marketing yesterday, and we were talking about cold plunges. And I was like, I hate cold plunges. I have a cold plunge in my house, but I hate them. Even thinking about them makes me start to get nervous because I hate them so much. But it has so many benefits besides the physical benefits, which when I was talking about this, you can go back and listen to the podcast 6, 7, 8 years ago. I was talking about cold plunging. That's when I first started it. And there was like no research at that time. It was kind of like this weird pseudoscience stuff was coming out. Now it's like research after research after research is showing how it's so good for your body in so many ways with inflammation. But even taking, besides it being really good for your body, it's one of the best things you can do for your mind. Because talk about that little inner bitch coming up. As soon as you're about to hop in that cold water, that voice is going to come in and say, no, you don't need to do it. Hey, just skip today. Or, hop in for 10 seconds and then hop out and you've done it. And so that voice that comes up that tries to hold you back is going to come up in that moment. That voice is the voice that is holding you back from everything that you want in your life. That's the thing that's holding you back more than anything else in this world. And so the idea is, how can I trigger that voice to come up and then actually start to work past it? It tests your willpower. Willpower is something that can be grown. And so you get more willpower. You might have no willpower right now or very little willpower. And you might decide, you know what, I need to develop this willpower. This Misogi challenge is meant to test your willpower. And willpower is like a muscle. It's something that can be grown. But how else can we bring this into doing something that is so hard? When you look at the cold water can definitely do it. But how can you find something in your life that is a mental, physical, and spiritual practice that absolutely changes you? How can you develop a cadence in your life of Misogi? How can you use water or working out or going for a run or whatever it is that might be for you to identify that thing that you really need to do that's going to expand you past who you currently are? You can use the water, you can use other things, but the idea is to do something so hard that it changes you in one day. What is it for you? So think about that for a second. As I'm speaking, I want you to answer the question. What is the thing that as I'm speaking is popping up into your head and it scares the shit out of you? Where you're like, oh my God. No, I don't want to do that thing. We think change is a gradual process, but it can happen in an instant. right? So what is something that could change you that you're so afraid of doing that literally as I'm speaking scares the shit out of you? You know, there's been many things that have happened, good and bad in your life that have changed you in one go. What if you could just go in one go change yourself? What would you need to do in order to feel like a changed person right after? Like, I'll give you a couple of examples. And, you know, you could use any of them. You could not use any of them. It doesn't matter to me. I don't recommend any of them because I don't know you. I don't know your skill set. I don't know your mindset. I don't know your body. But I'll give you some examples of things that I know that people have done to change themselves, right? But take these, start thinking of your own, start asking yourself what really scares me. It could be something like going for an extremely intense hike. Not a nice little hike where you bring your water bottle and you take your iPhone, you take selfies the whole time, but something that challenges you, something that is beyond your capacity. Obviously be safe. Don't go, climbing a mountain when you've never climbed before, but something that changes you. Maybe something that instead of going for a cute little 30-minute hike, maybe you find the longest hike you could possibly, 8 hours. Maybe you bring a friend with you and you're like, hey, let's challenge ourselves to do this and to not stop. Like something that's fully beyond your capacity, right? Maybe it's doing a sweat lodge. There's many sweat lodges you can go to. One thing that's really popping off a lot, and I'm seeing it over and over and over again, there was literally just like a 4 or 5 part series that kept popping up on my Instagram. It was like CNBC, I think it was, or MSNBC or something. Did like a 4 or 5 part series on psychedelics and how people are using it to change themselves, and people with PTSD are changing themselves, and people are even doing breath work, which is, you don't have to ingest anything. It's just breathing. Maybe it's going for a run that's way beyond your capacity. And I mean, way beyond. Like there's a client that I had years ago and she was like, Rob, I'm just so stuck. And I was like, do you ever go for a run? And she's like, sometimes, but usually it's about a mile. I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go for a run until you can't run anymore. And then I want you to find that point where you can't run anymore. I don't want you to track miles. I just want you to go. And then what I want you to do is keep going. Because it's like, David Goggins always says the law of 40%. When you have found what your body and your brain think is 100% of your capacity, like I can't do any more. When you get to that point, you're usually only about 40% of your capacity. And your growth happens outside of that moment. When you find your limit and then you push past it. And I'm not, obviously, take what I'm saying, be very careful. Obviously, that was one thing I do want you to do. But how can you push yourself more? A lot of times we are capable of so much more, but we settle for safe. And, something like this, like the Misogi Challenge, can really open you up to changing yourself and believing in yourself more. And the idea is to do something that you at this moment, who you currently are, don't know if you can do. It has to challenge you. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. So you have to meet like your end of your comfort zone, mentally, physically, emotionally, and you have to push through it so that you can find what you're truly capable of. And you have to get past what you think is possible. So the question I have for you is, what is that thing? And how can you develop a cadence in your life to actually get yourself to this point of, I don't know if I can go any further, and then pushing further. So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If you love this episode, please share it on your Instagram and tag me in it. Also, if you're out there and you do want to challenge yourself, you do want to grow yourself, you do want to change yourself and make 2024 the absolute best year of your life, I am running a 30-day challenge that starts in January that is built on doing 6 pillars every single day that are outside of your comfort zone that push you to get better. If you want to learn more about it, you can go to levelup30.com. So levelup30.com. The first 100 people get $50 off the challenge, and they get entered into a drawing for a free one-on-one call with me. I'm giving out one one-on-one call. So once again, it's levelup30.com. If you're just tired of where you have been, if you're ready to grow yourself, you're ready to expand yourself, you're ready to be a different person, you're ready to reignite that fire that's deep down inside of you, and you're not fucking around anymore, go to levelup30.com, see what's on there, watch the video, read the page, see if it's right for you, and maybe I'll see you inside the challenge. And with that, I'm gonna leave you the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission to make someone else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day. Welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to teach you about perfectionism, where it comes from, how it shows up in your life, and actually psychologically how to remove it from your life so you can get better. Let's dive in. Perfectionism holds so many people back. It's held me back for years, and it's something that I've had to battle with and try to overcome. But When you look at it, perfectionism is this relentless pursuit for flawlessness. And when you think of it that way, it sounds great. But if you are a person who deals with perfectionism, you know that it's not. It's not good at all. Perfectionism and this constant need to always feel like you're perfect comes at the cost of many mental and emotional well-beings that exist out there. And so today I'm going to talk to you about perfectionism. I'm going to talk about, why we develop this adaptation, this behavioral adaptation called perfectionism, where it comes from. But I'm also going to start to talk about how it shows up in your day-to-day life. And then I'm going to teach you how to actually overcome it. So I always tell you this, whenever I think of something, and I'm always thinking about creating an episode, I'm always thinking about, something that people deal with, my first question always pops in my head is why? Like, why? Where does it come from? Why do we develop this thing? And so perfectionism begins pretty much where everything else begins. It begins in childhood, and it is considered a behavioral adaptation to your environment and psychological factors as you're growing up. The need to be perfect. I need to be perfect or else. And where does it usually start? Yes, your parents. It's parental expectations, the conditional love that we all get. And I want you to understand this. I never want to feel like I'm trashing parents. That's not what I'm trying to do. But when we look at who we are and why we are the way that we are, 95% of the time it comes from the people who raise us in some sort of way. And it's not like they went and did this to us on purpose. Nothing against parents. But, I feel like I bring up parents every single episode, and I'm not trying to trash them, and it's not easy to be a parent, but nobody's perfect. And most people don't understand the psychology of themselves, and they definitely don't understand the psychology as they're raising a child. And so it's, it's the way that the parent is, but also at the same time, it's also the child's fault. Children don't fully process the world the same as adults. And so their interpretation of the world is not always correct. And so we just have to understand how the child interpreting the world and the parent doing their best come together to make you who you are. And we have to understand that as much as any parent loves their child, unless that parent is incredibly emotionally aware, secure, and intelligent, most of the times parents end up raising their children under the circumstance of conditional love. It's like, you do this, and I love you. I give you affection. You don't do this, and I will reprimand you, or I will retract my love from you. And most people don't realize that that's the way that they actually parent. One of the ways that is the most prominent way that parents parent their children is do what I say or else. And that or else for a child feels like retraction of love, which is the most detrimental thing to a child. Is my parents' love is being taken away from me. I no longer feel safe. I no longer feel secure. And so take a second and just think about how that can affect a child. Because all the child cares about is, does my mom love me? And does my dad love me? And if they learn that they do something or don't do something, either or, and it feels like a retraction of love from their parents, they're going to want to stop doing that thing because that feels like conditional love. It's not unconditional. And so, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how childhood creates perfectionism. And so let's say, if we look at it, first off, the thing I want you to understand is as far as conditional love goes, there was a study that was called Parental Conditional Regard in 2004, and it was called Psychological Costs, and it was done in, like I said, 2004. And so the study explored how parents use conditional love and where parents offer more affection and approval in response to a child's achievements, and how that contributes to the development of perfectionism and other maladaptive behaviors as well. And so really what they found is the psychological costs of conditional regard, and it increased internal pressure for the child, and as they were a child, and it also became an adult, and it lowered their self-esteem as a child as well. And so some children become perfectionists as a strategy to feel like their parents' love will not be taken from them. And so they have to do what they want their parents to do. They have to be a certain way. They can't mess up or else they feel like their parents' love is going to be taken from them. And this is just, like I said, it's a behavioral adaptation, perfectionism. And there's many other behavioral adaptations, but today we're just going to be covering perfectionism. And so let me give you a couple of examples of what can happen in childhood that makes them become a perfectionist. Let's say a child grows up in a household where love and approval are contingent on achievements. I have worked with many people and have some friends where praise and affection will be given to them when the child brings home excellent grades or when they win a competition or in sports, and they are praised and the parent shows them so much love and so much attention and they're happy for them. But that same parent might show disappointment and withdrawal of their love and approval when the child falls short or when they don't get an A or when the child doesn't win a game or a competition. And if this conditional love teaches a child that their worth is tied to their success. And so what that does is it creates a perfectionist mindset where, I have to do anything that I possibly can to succeed to get my parents' approval. So that is a very common way that perfectionism comes about. Another way that perfectionism comes about is if your parents are also perfectionists, or one of them is, and we tend to model after our parents. So children, obviously mimic the behaviors and attitudes of their parents. And so in a family where one of the parents shows perfectionism tendencies, or they set unrealistically high standards for themselves and for their children, the child learns to internalize these standards. They see what their parents are doing and say, okay, this is how I'm supposed to be. And so they get this feeling of, I'm not good enough unless I'm perfect. I'm not good enough unless I achieve. Hey, real quick, I want to introduce you to something called Mindset Mentor Plus. If you love this podcast, you will absolutely love what I'm about to talk about. I designed Mindset Mentor Plus to help you actively integrate every one of these episodes into your life. And here's how it works. With every episode of this podcast that comes out, Mindset Mentor Plus subscribers get more. You're going to get multiple page, detailed, printable worksheets, effectively a mini masterclass that's way more in depth than just this podcast. They also come with journaling questions, challenges, assignments, and so much more, so that you're not just listening to these podcasts passively, but you're actively integrating them into your life. That way you improve much faster. I also do monthly Q&A sessions in there and much, much more. If you want to learn more about it, go to mindsetmentor.com or click the link that's down in the description. And so they can observe the parent's stress over minor mistakes and how they beat themselves up, and maybe like a incessant need for order and for the house to be perfect, whatever it might be. And that can instill really similar perfectionism traits in the child as well. And I can give you a couple of examples of people that I've seen. I had a client one time, and I won't tell you his name, but he was over in the UK, and his father was in the military over in the UK. And he had this thing where he couldn't stop working. Like he kept working and working and working and working and working. And he was trying to make everything perfect. And he wasn't getting as much time with his children as he wanted to. He had 2 children under the age of 5. He wanted to spend more time with them. He wasn't able to spend much time with them because he was always working. And we started going through and figure out why he was working so much, who he was trying to prove himself to, all of this. And it boiled down to, after working with him for a few weeks, that what he was trying to do was prove that he was good enough for his father. And the reason why was because his father had these incredibly high standards for everything needed to be perfect, to the point where when he would go and put the milk box away, his dad would go in and open up the fridge and adjust the milk box so it was perfectly aligned with the door. And so he got this idea of like, oh my God, if I can't even put the milk away correctly, I can't do anything correctly. And it developed this feeling of perfectionism inside of him. This is not always this, but I don't want to make a vast generalization, but I see this a lot, not in every case, but I see this a lot with people who have parents that are in the military. The people who are in the military a lot of times think, well, the military's done so much for me, I'm going to raise my children the same way that the military raised me. But a lot of times what that does, not in every case once again, but a lot of times that I've seen with people who have parents that are in the military, is there are these impossibly high standards that they can never get to. And so it's just this constant stress of always needing to be perfect, always need to be exact And it just ends up being really, really hard for a child to do. And it becomes really hard to unprogram someone as they become an adult. And so that's another example of how children can see their parent be so hardcore on being a perfectionist, and they can pick it up from them as well. Another example as well that is if you think of like a child who frequently faces criticism from their parents for their mistakes or any shortcomings, they develop perfectionism as well as a defense mechanism. And so what happens is whenever their parent criticizes them or whatever it might be for mistakes or shortcomings, the child develops this fear of criticism, which leads them to try to be as perfect as they possibly can in an attempt to avoid negative feedback, because negative feedback or criticism feels like, once again, the withdrawal of love from their parents. And so over time, this can create a really intense internal pressure to be flawless in every aspect of life. And so when you look at it, there's just many examples where this can happen in childhood that create somebody to be this way. If you think of a child who grew up in a house where there was a lot of, they develop this as a coping strategy, this perfectionism. So maybe they grew up in a house with a lot of instability or a lot of trauma or chaotic fighting in family environment. It can also be bullying at school. And so they try to be perfect, so that therefore they keep the peace, quote unquote, keep the peace of their parents. So they kind of try to make everything's perfect, so therefore their parents don't blow up at them, or they try to be perfect so that they're not really seen by other children, so therefore they're not bullied. And so, in some cases it can even be physical or emotional abuse from the parents. And so it's like, I need to keep the peace. I need everything to be perfect so that therefore this doesn't happen. And sometimes it could be emotional or physical abuse that one parent does to another parent. And so the child tries to feel like they keep the peace with everybody. Everything has to be perfect all the time because I don't want my dad to physically abuse my mother. And so this happens over and over and over. There's many different ways that it comes from. But really, if you feel like you're a perfectionist, you should ask yourself, where do you think that it came from in your childhood? Do you think it was one of these? And hopefully listening to this, hopefully it sparks something inside of you. You can see where it's coming from for you. Now, as far as this goes, how does it show up as an adult? When we look at being a perfectionist, how does it show up as an adult? Well, number one, it's relationships. Perfectionism and perfectionists often struggle with intimacy and vulnerability in relationships. And there's a few reasons why. They might fear showing any imperfections because that could lead to rejection. And so what they do is it results in having a emotional distance. Like, I need to look perfect to them. And, I have this feeling of I can't let them in, or I can't let them get close, because then they'll know the real me. And so it ends up gets in the way and kind of throws a big wall in between you and the other person, because it's like, I got to keep them at a distance, because if they get too close and they know the real me, they'll know that I'm not perfect, and then they won't love me. It can also show up as constantly striving to be the perfect partner, like giving themselves away for the other person and being exactly what the other person wants them to be. Sometimes it could also end up being overly critical of their loved one's imperfections. So because they're such perfectionists, they can look at their other spouse or the boyfriend or girlfriend, whoever they're in a relationship with, and then constantly notice their imperfections. They tend to have really high expectations of themselves and criticism of themselves, but also of their partner as well. And that can really get in the way of a relationship. Another place where it tends to show up is in business or at the workplace. At work, a perfectionist might set really incredibly unattainable high standards for themselves. And that can lead to a couple different things. Number one, it can lead to procrastination, because they have such high standards that they fear not meeting those standards, and it causes them to delay in their tasks. On the opposite side of that, they might overwork themselves to try to meet their impossibly high standards. And that can lead to burnout, reduced productivity, and not getting to where they really want to. And, sometimes the way that it shows up is like attention to detail, impossibly high standards, impossibly high details. Everything's got to go perfect, and they go over the details over and over and over and over again and burn themselves out with it. It can also show up of this inability to delegate. It has to be perfect, so I have to do it. I can't let anybody else do this. I had this for a while when I had my first business, and it ran it into the ground, right? It can also really stifle your creativity or your innovation, because sometimes what happens is we know what we're good at, we know what we can do, and to be innovative and be creative means we have to do something different. And we don't want to do anything that we've never done before, because then we have to be a beginner at it, and we don't want to fail because we're perfectionists, right? So that can be another way that shows up in the business and in the workplace as well. Another place where it shows up is your mindset, and just the way that you're thinking about yourself. A lot of times perfectionists have this all or nothing mindset where they view any minor mistake as total failure. And it leads to this really negative self-image and low self-esteem of themselves. And it's what's called black or white thinking. If you go back to the episode I did a week or 2 weeks ago about cognitive distortions, this is black or white thinking. And that black or white thinking can hinder their development because they're unable to recognize how they're having these little tiny incremental improvements because they're just not seeing those or seeing all the places where they quote unquote failed. And so, other places where it can show up as an adult is the fear of failure. We can have this fear of making mistakes, and that can lead for some people chronic anxiety, stress, and perfectionists often experience really intense fear of failure, which can paralyze them and prevent them from taking risks or trying new things. It can also show up in really low self-esteem because they tend to focus on their perceived flaws and shortcomings rather than any strengths or achievements that they might have. And then the other thing, like I said, it definitely shows up a lot of times in procrastination. And so let's talk about how to, now that we've all kind of gone, oh shit, yeah, Rob, seems like I'm a perfectionist, because pretty much most people are at this point, are a perfectionist in some sort of way. How do we overcome this perfectionism? How do we work through it? How do we start to figure out how to get better? The first thing is self-compassion, some mindfulness, some self-compassion, okay? You have to realize at the age that you're at right now, you have things that have happened to you in your past. And some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are just, neutral. We need to reparent ourselves. And this is something I've been bringing up a lot lately, which is, I'm 38 years old. If something happened to me where my father didn't show up for me, or he wasn't there, or he had these incredibly high standards when I was 9 or 10 years old, I'm basically stuck in time in my brain at that 10 years old. And I will be honest with you, I wasn't incredibly emotionally intelligent at 10 years old. I was intellectually intelligent at 10 years old. At 38, I can see things way different than I saw them back then. And so it's time for us to kind of reparent ourselves and have more self-compassion. The perfectionism is a behavioral adaptation for something that happened as a child. Well, you're an adult now. Give yourself what you feel like you didn't have that created that adaptation in the first place. And usually what that is self-compassion. Usually that's compassion, and usually that's acceptance. And just accepting yourself, flaws and all. There's no such thing as perfect. You know that. We all know that. And so it's like, how can we look at ourselves with more compassion, more acceptance? There was a study that was done, and it was called Self-Compassion, Perfectionism, and Academic Burnout in Asian and European American College Students, a cross-cultural study, and it was done in 2005. And the research went through and found that self-compassion, it kind of explored the role of self-compassion in reducing the negative effects of perfectionism. And the more self-compassion that somebody had for themselves, the more acceptance that they had for themselves, it actually took away the feelings of perfectionism and the feelings of academic burnout. And so it showed that higher levels of self-compassion were associated with lower levels of perfectionism and burnout, which indicated that the interventions of focusing on mindfulness, focusing on self-compassion can be effective really in mitigating the harm and the harmful effects of perfectionism. And so that's the first thing. Just be nicer to yourself. Don't be such an asshole. Second thing is, I know you want to achieve and you want to overachieve, but start setting realistic goals. Set some small, realistic goals for yourself, and then remind yourself that done is better than perfect. One of my mentors used to always say that, is done is better than perfect. Just get it done, because if you want it to be perfect, it'll probably never be finished. So let's just set goals, and let's just make sure that we focus on things being done. And then the last thing that I really want you to do is I want you to embrace failure as a learning opportunity. I always say this when someone joins this program that I have called Business Breakthrough. It's where I teach people how to grow their coaching businesses. Is the phrase that I say in the very second video, whatever it is fuck it up and figure it out. Be okay with messing up. If you're just holding yourself back because you don't want to mess up, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to mess up. You have to mess up. You have to mess up. Failure is just a lesson, and you'll never get that lesson if you don't fail. And so you've got to look at failure as an opportunity to to learn, to grow, to improve. You will never be a graceful master if you're not willing to be a foolish beginner. And so don't call yourself an imposter. Don't bring yourself down. Just realize I'm a beginner. I'm going to get better at this. And if you do fail, it's not the end of the world. Just use it as a way to learn and grow and get better. And so it's really just important for you to understand that if you feel like you're a perfectionist, it's some sort of behavioral adaptation you created as a child. Now, it has probably some good things happening in your life right now. It has some bad things happening in your life right now. Ultimately, if you want to change it, there are steps to change it. All you have to do is you have to give yourself more compassion, more self-love. You have to give yourself more acceptance, more mindfulness, and just start to work through it and say, I'm going to reparent myself. I'm going to give myself what it is that I didn't need. And then at that point, you don't have to be perfect because there's no one that you're trying to prove yourself to anymore because you've already become enough for yourself. So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If you love this episode, please share it on Instagram stories. Tag me at Rob Dial Jr., ROBDIALJR. Also, if you love this podcast, you will absolutely 100% love Mindset Mentor Plus. Mindset Mentor Plus is a community and program that I created to help you take all of these episodes and integrate them into your life. For every episode that comes out of Mindset Mentor Plus subscribers are going to get a whole lot more. Every episode comes with detailed multi-page worksheets that you can print out, that you can underline, that you can highlight, that has journaling questions, that has assignments and challenges. There's an entire community of over 1,000 people that are in Mindset Mentor Plus you could connect with, see if anybody lives in your area, connect with other people who are on this road of trying to improve themselves. It is also where I do monthly Q&A sessions. So if you want to connect with me through the Q&A sessions live and ask me questions, you can do that as well. And if you want some more information on it, just go to mindsetmentor.com. Once again, mindsetmentor.com. There's a video that explains everything there. And with that, I'm going to leave you the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission to make somebody else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day. Welcome to today's video. Today we're going to talk about how to get really clear on exactly what it is that you want in your life. Because if you can get very clear on what it is that you want in your life, you're more likely to work towards it, to get it, to vision it, and to actually take action towards it. Let's dive in. Today, we're going to be cussing, so if you don't like cussing, this ain't your episode. Today we're going to be talking about what the fuck do you want? Like, what do you actually want in your life? What do you want? I feel like it's like... what is it? The Notebook, where it's like, what do you want? I feel like part of my life when I coach people is like, what do you want? And they're like, I don't know what I want. I'm like, what do you want? Right? They never get really, really clear on what it is that you want. It's crazy to me how many people don't truly actually know what it is that they want in their life. A lot of them know what they don't want. I'm very clear on that. Like they get very clear. I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. And I'm like, what do you want? I want to make more money and have like a nice house. And that's about all of their vision. And then they get mad that they don't have the life that they want because they never actually get really clear on what the life that they want is, right? It's like, if you look back, it's crazy to me when I look back through all of these ancient texts. I love reading all of these ancient texts because a lot of them say pretty much the same things. And one of the things is that you see consistently is something along the lines of ask and you shall receive, which basically means get really clear on what it is that you want and then go out and get it, right? Or ask for it. But it's like, yeah, if you're going to ask for it, you got to be clear on exactly what it is that you want. And so many people just don't get really clear on the life that they want to have. And then they're mad that the life that they have is not the life that they want. But it's because they didn't get clear on exactly what it is that they want. And so you have to find out and get very clear on what it is that you want so that you can decide what you don't want to do, what you don't want to be, how you need to change, what actions you need to stop taking or start taking. And when you decide, and you've heard me say it over and over and over again in this podcast, the root word for the word decide comes from decadere, which actually means to cut off. So you can cut off all other options, cut off all other versions of you that are in the way of holding you back from creating the life that you want. So what do you want? Because most people have an idea, but they don't have a really clear, concise of this is exactly what I'm going to be getting in my life. And it's crazy. If you were to, when we get done with today's podcast, if you were to take 20 minutes on your phone and just put 20 minutes on your phone, take out a pen and paper and say, what do I want in my life? And make sure that you are as clear and concise as possible. You'll be like, okay, I've got a great vision for what I'm trying to go do. But you've got to be very clear and concise. Not, I want to make more money. Tell me exactly how much money you want to make. Tell me how much you want to make. how you're going to make it, how much you want to save, how much you want to invest, how much you want to be worth, what you want your assets to look like. When you say, I want to lose weight, that's not it. That's not clear and concise, but it's like, how much do you want to weigh? What do you want to weigh? Everything. And the main reason why people don't really get clear on what they want is why they don't really have the life they want is because they're not clear on what it is that they want. And so when you can sit down and actually write with pen and paper and make it real and physical and exist in this world, it makes it so much easier to go, okay, I've got this now. Now let me make a plan. But if you don't have an idea of exactly what you want, you're not going to be able to come up with any plan of exactly how you're going to get there. So what do you want in your life? What's the reason why you're on this planet? Right? When you die, how do you want to be remembered? When you're born, you know what you want. When you're hungry, you cry. When you're in pain, you cry. Whenever you want something, you cry because you want to get it. So you know what you want when you're younger, but what happened along the way? Well, somewhere along the way, as you were growing up, it happens to basically all of us, right? Somebody said to you as you got older, stop being so selfish, or you can't do that, or be realistic. Oh, you want to be president? No one in this family's even graduated college. You're not going to become president. You can't do that. Oh, you want to be an astronaut? You can't be an astronaut. Oh, you want to be a successful business owner? Nobody in this family's ever had a business before. You come from a bad part of town. You come from a bunch of poor people. We're always going to be poor, whatever it is. So we have this very innate belief in ourselves when we're young, because there's no reason not to believe in yourself. And then at some point in time, it is deprogrammed. It is programmed out of us. And this is your life. It is. This is the life that you have. And maybe there's more lives after this. Maybe there's reincarnation. Maybe there's not. Maybe there's a heaven. Maybe there's not. Maybe we become worm food. Maybe we don't. Maybe we get other lives. I don't know. And I don't pretend to act like I know. And anybody who does pretend to act like they know probably doesn't know because they've never actually gone through it, right? But this is what I do know, and what you know is that you are here and you do have this life. And so what I do want you to understand is you need to stop living someone else's dream, not even someone else's dream. You need to stop living what someone else told you to live and to do what it is that you truly want. You know, people say, get a real job. Maybe you wanted to have this amazing career and be a painter or a musician. And your mom and dad was like, no, you should do something different. Oh, you're very artsy, honey, but you're not going to make any money doing that. You should go to school and be an engineer. And how many parents did this to their children and told them what to go to school for, and what schools to go to, and what job to take, and all of that. And really more than anything else, we do it a lot of times to please them, or they want you to do this so that they don't get embarrassed saying, oh, my son is an artist and not a doctor, whatever it might be. But then you start to realize that I'm either living somebody else's life, I'm living somebody else's dream, or I'm living within someone else's limitations. And we've built a life where we are actually living inside of someone else's box, the box that they placed us in, not even the box we made for ourselves. So, and I get this because your parents do care about you, hopefully, right? The majority of people listening, your parents do care about you, and they want you to go the safe route. They want you to go the secure route. So it does make more sense in their minds, being older, to go to college than it is to be an artist. So it's a more secure route. But I don't know about you, the thing that 2020 taught me more than anything else is that what we thought was secure wasn't secure, because 35 million people lost their job in like a week or two. That doesn't sound too damn secure to me. So the problem with secure is that rarely does it, and when I say secure, I mean quote unquote secure, is rarely does it mean fulfilling. And, when you look at the job that you do and who you work for, the company that you have, whatever it is it fulfilling to you? When you look there and you're just like, oh, we build widgets and we sell this product. Does that feel fulfilling to you? Do you feel like you're making the world a better place? What does sound fulfilling to you? Alan Watts says, a great question to ask yourself is, what would you be doing if money were no object? Because a lot of times what we do is we work just to make money, but we don't like our jobs, and then we're just following money. So if we follow that route, and the quote that Alan Watts says is, if you work just to make money and you don't like your job, then you're just following the money. Then you will be doing things that you don't like doing in order to keep living, which is to be doing things that you don't like doing. And he says it's better to have a short life doing things that you love than a long life spent in a miserable way. And so you've got to ask yourself, am I living the life that's actually truly fulfilling to me, that is actually what I want? Or am I doing what other people told me to do or what was realistic? Because if you remember, and the reason why I say it's been programmed out of you to quote unquote be realistic and to put yourself into some sort of box is, do you remember what it was like being a kid? Or have you been around a kid recently, like a 3-year-old? You know, like so many kids want to be a fireman. They want to be first female president. They want to be a pilot. They want to be an astronaut. Very rarely do I hear a child be like, I want to work a corporate job doing something that I hate. Never heard a 3-year-old say that, right? They want to do something amazing and exciting. And every bit of them believes that it's possible. But at some point in time, we stop thinking that way. We are programmed out of that thinking. But we can program ourselves back into that thinking. And the reason why it's important to start thinking this way is to realize that along the way, people change their plans not based on personal interest, but usually because of security, quote unquote security. But then they end up living a life that's unlived. And that's why the number one regret of people who are dying, according to the book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, is that I wish I lived a life that was true to myself and not the life that other people expected of me. I like to follow, like Tony Robbins says, success leaves clues. Well, failure also leaves clues as well. And so if we can look at people who got to the end of their life and they knew that it was ending, and they have these regrets. And the number one regret of those people was, I wish I lived a life that was true to myself and not the life that other people expected of me. I don't know about you, but I look at that and I go, fuck that. I'm not doing that. I'm going to live the life that I want to live. Because that's their regret. I don't want that to be my regret. Success leaves clues. Well, failure also leaves clues as well. There's a lot of unhappy people out there because they go the route that their family tells them to go, or they go the route that they think society thinks that we should go. And then 10, 20 years down the road, they realize that it's not direction that made them fulfilled. And they wake up, they're 45 years old, they're 50 years old, and they think, what the fuck have I been doing with my life? Right? That's what a midlife crisis is. So I ask you, what do you want? Don't listen to this podcast episode and just go to the next one. Take time. Ask yourself the question. If money were no object, what would you do with your time? What's your passion? What is it that would make you feel fulfilled, that would make you feel like you're doing something great in this world? You know, if you can figure out that, could you figure out a way to make it your profession? Cool, you probably could. Your passion doesn't always have to be your profession. You know, your profession can make you some money, but it gives you more time to follow your passion. And so maybe your passion can be your paycheck. Maybe your passion doesn't have to be your paycheck, but you get a paycheck and you spend your time doing that. And when you get out of it, you spend the majority of your time outside of it, actually following your passion. So what do you want? Do you want to travel? Do you want to backpack Europe? I quit my job in 2012 and I saved up for an entire year, and I was 26 years old. And in 2012, I backpacked Europe for 3 months. I went all over the place, and it was the most life-changing, best thing that I've ever done. It gave me so much clarity in my life. I would not do what I do now had I not had those 3 months alone. There was a lot of moments. I think that everybody should take a solo trip somewhere at some point in time in their life. It doesn't have to be 3 months. It could be 10 days. But when you get that alone time with yourself and you get to think and you get to process and you get to be away from everything else. You know, when I quit my job and I went around and I went to 25 different cities that were inside of Europe in 3 months. And all over the place, I got really clear on what it is that I wanted. And I was like, I want to have my own business. I want it to be online. I want it to be location independent so that I can do this traveling, because I'm obsessed with this traveling thing. And what's crazy about it is when the whole year leading up to going and actually traveling and going to Europe, not one person told me it was a bad idea. It was wild. I thought there would be so many people be like, Rob, but you're so successful at such a young age. Why are you doing this? Not one person said, I don't think you should do it. Everyone said one of two things. Either number one, I wish I would have done that when I was younger. Or number two, I did that and it was the best decision of my life. Because most people go the sensible route. They go the sensible route and they numb their own desires and they don't go and do the things that they want. Maybe it's traveling that you want. Maybe it's starting a foundation. I don't know what it is, but it's really going to be different for every person listening to this episode. But do you actually know what the hell you want? You know, stop saying I don't know and start figuring it out. If you don't know at this very moment, Well, then spend every morning while you drink your coffee, not on your phone, not talking to someone else, but journaling, what do I want in my life? I remember I was listening to a really, really old speech, and a lady stood up and she said, how do I know what I want? Like, I know about manifesting, I know about the universe, but I don't know what it is that I want. How do I find it? And the person who was speaking, I can't remember who it was that I was listening to, said, wake up every single morning and say out loud, I want to know what I want. And I was like, holy shit, that's so simple. And it's so profound. If you don't know what it is that you want, wake up every single morning and say, I want to know what I want. I want to know what I want. And you start setting your sights on that thing, and eventually you'll figure out what it is that you want. This is your life, and it is ending 1 minute at a time. You deserve to have everything that you want in this life. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be successful, wealthy, joyful, full of love and compassion. But if you follow your heart, what's really interesting is that the money will usually follow too. If you set your sights on money, it will make it harder to make money. But when you follow what it is that you're truly passionate about, what's really crazy is because you're so passionate about it, it will be so easy to put in the reps and to put in the hours towards that thing. And usually because you do it so much just straight out of passion, you end up doing a lot more. And because you're doing a lot more, you become better. And because you become better, you can actually figure out a way to make money getting it and doing that thing. Most people don't think that they can make a living doing what they love. Most people can. So make a list of the 20 things that you love. What would you do for free? What do you just love to do? And see if you can think of ways to make money doing them. Like for me, I'm weird in the sense that I love learning about people. I love sitting and talking to people. I love talking to a person, finding out their story and figuring out how they got to be the person that they are. I love reading books on psychology and therapy and early childhood development. I geek out on those things. Most people don't want to read that. I would do that even if I did it for 12 years. I made no money doing it basically, but I just did it because I was passionate about it. And then one day I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. I feel like I have a lot of knowledge that I could help people. Never one day did I, in my wildest dreams, did I ever think it could be what it is now. But I was just so obsessed with it. And then one day I was like, oh my God, my brain is filled with this stuff. I might as well share it. And then what you do is you just literally figure out exactly what it is that you want. And once you decide what it is that you want, you decide, decadere, to cut off, there are no other options. You decide that you won't let anyone talk you out of it, especially yourself. People will tell you you're crazy, and they'll tell you to be realistic. Find what you want and make it your mission statement. To find a mission statement that excites you and read it every single morning. Share your vision, and people will want to help you. There's a phrase that I used to always say to myself when I first opened my office as a sales manager in the franchise that I owned. And I don't know where it came from, but the phrase was, when you set yourself on fire, people will come to watch you burn. And I love that because I was like, I'm going to find the thing that sets me on fire. And I'm going to share it with so much fucking passion that people are like, I want to be a part of that. I want to see what's going on over here. I want to learn from this person. You know, there's a great quote that I love, that's Henry David Thoreau, that says, most people live a life of silent desperation and go to the grave with a song still in them. Most people live a life of silent desperation and go to the grave with a song still in them. Don't go to the grave with a song still in you. Another quote that I love that's also close to that as well is Les Brown. And Les Brown says, the graveyard is the richest place on earth because it's here that you'll find all of the hopes and dreams that were never fulfilled, the books that were never written, the songs that were never sung, the inventions that were never shared, the cures that were never discovered, all because someone was too afraid to take that first step, to keep with the problem, or be determined to carry out their dream. Figure out what it is that you want, decide that you're going to do it, and don't let anybody talk you out of it. So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If you love this episode, please share it on your Instagram and tag me in it, Rob Dial Jr., ROBDIALJR. And if you're out there and you love this podcast, you might love to challenge yourself. If you really want to kick yourself in the ass, and you need a kick in the ass in January to make 2024 the best year of your life, join my Level Up 30 challenge. It's 30 days. We're going to be pushing ourselves. We have 6 pillars that we have to hit every single day for 30 days. And I'm going to be coaching you live in a group session every single day for 30 days. And I'm going to be pushing you, helping you, going through the challenge with you. If you want to learn more about it, go to levelup30.com. Once again, levelup30.com. Learn more. And with that, I'm going to leave you the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission to make somebody else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day. See ya.